Yo, it's me, CSEOTT baby, and I'm here with my review of the 2008 film Iron Man, starring Robert Downey Jr.'s Jeff Bridges, and is directed by Jon Favreau. Alright, now as I usually do, I want to give my background on, my experience. So my version of Iron Man was this. Growing up, this was my version of Iron Man. The animated series, a very specific version. There's a funny, weird kind of version at the beginning, and then there's a serious version later. They did the same thing with Fantastic Four, actually. So growing up, I grew up with superhero cartoons, X-Men, Batman, Superman. Specific to Marvel, though, X-Men, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Fantastic Four, Silver Surfer, which was around for a while, There was these Marvel shows that I grew up with, Incredible Hulk, And so when they said Iron Man was going to be brought to the big screen, I'm like, yeah, I'll see an Iron Man movie, sure. And they announced Robert Downey Jr., and I'm like, who? Because there's other people, they could have been and I had no idea who he was. Sorry, but I had no idea who he was. At this point, I think I had seen Weird Science, but I didn't know he was in it. But I had no idea who he was. I understand now he had some problems, drug-related stuff. Happens. Especially when you're in show business. Look at the Coreys, you know what I mean? But, so, thinking about this, alright? A lot was riding on this. Especially when a lot was riding on Robert Downey Jr. You look like 11 years later, what Robert Downey Jr. has done for this franchise. And you go back to the mid to late 90s when he had his drug problems, and you look at, you go to some party where he's talking out on drugs and you say, that man is going to lead a superhero franchise one day, and they would laugh at you. Probably, but you'd be right, So, when Iron Man came out, I was unable to go see it because the weekend that it came out, I just so happened to be moving into this apartment. So I was unable to go see it. So I had to wait, for some reason, until it came out on the DVD. And once I did, I watched it, thought it was pretty good. It's not the best in the MCU, but certainly not the worst. So the story is that Tony Stark owns this multi-million-dollar weapons company, and he is taken hostage by these terrorists, and he builds a metal suit to escape. Once he gets out, he says he's not going to be making weapons anymore, but the person in charge he's sort of Obadiah Stane, who was sort of left in charge because Tony wasn't able to take charge when his parents died because he was, I don't know. Tony Stark the character is younger than Robert Downey Jr. is. So it's confusing. Because if you look at Endgame, they go back to 1970, and Tony Stark's not born yet. Robert Downey Jr. would have been like 5 years old. So I'm just saying. And in the long run, when you think of where this started and you think of where it is now, especially for me, like a couple of months ago, this was on TV and I watched it with my son thinking, no, this isn't going to be anything spectacular. It still holds up 10 years later with all the grand movies we got, the big spectacle type superhero movies we've had in the MCU. It still holds up pretty well. Its connections to the rest of the MCU universe are very small, in that we just have S.H.I.E.L.D., which they don't call themselves fully S.H.I.E.L.D. to the end of this movie, and I'll talk about that because there's continuity error in that. We see Howard Stark, we hear about Howard Stark, the connection there, and then there's the post-credit scene, which we'll talk about that because I know there was a post-credit scene when I first watched this for the very first time. We'll get to that story. But so the S.H.I.E.L.D. thing. So throughout the film, they call it by its full. I cannot say it. They call it by its full name, and they said, well, you really need to sort that. I said, we're working on it. But then in Captain Marvel, which takes place in the 90s, they're already calling themselves Shield. So if it was implied that they didn't actually come up with the anagram Shield until this film, why are they calling themselves Shield in the 90s? It doesn't make any sense. I understand it was probably an oversight when they were writing the film, but, Iron Man was 11 years earlier, so you gotta kind of forgive it. That's one thing that kind of stands out for me is that, we're working on the name. But you're already calling yourself S.H.I.E.L.D. in the 90s. Especially if you watch the chronological order and you watch Captain America, First Avenger, then Captain Marvel, then this, and you're kind of like, wait a minute. I just watched Captain Marvel and they said S.H.I.E.L.D. And now they're here to start coming up with, they're working on it. What? I don't do that. I'm watching them in the order they were released. So this is where it starts. I've always kind of, I've said this before, I'm not a big fan of superhero origin story movies. And I always felt like the whole section of this film where he's in the cave making the suit, it's necessary for his genesis of it, right? Genesis, this is not Star Trek, for the genesis of his character. But he spends all his time in that cave creating a suit. And he does that. And he gets out. And then what does he do? Spends more time making another suit. So essentially, we spend half of this film making suits. If you think about it. And, okay, who's going to be the villain? You see Jeff Bridges, automatically you think, that's the bad guy. As I did, and that's when I realized we're not getting the Mandarin. That's what I wanted, the Mandarin. I thought the lead terrorist guy, because he was representative of the Ten Rings, and that's what it was, they gave him the Mandarin the magic powers. I thought he was going to be the Mandarin. Set up for a sequel. There was no setup for that. He's just gone. He just gets killed somewhere in the film, I think. He's not the Mandarin. And when we finally do get the Mandarin, well, let's just say we'll wait till Iron Man 3 review for that one. That's probably going to be the only one I'm really going to vent off on, because that's really the only one I have big problems with. And that's why people say, Iron Man 2 is the worst Iron Man movie. I'm like, okay, sure. But anyway, here, yes, there is that kind of, struggle where Tony Stark is trying to take his company back. He's been this partying type guy, Robert Downey Jr., basically. He's been this guy who likes to party, and now he wants to be serious. And the person who's supposed to let him, because this guy, Obadiah Stane, was put in charge by his father, after his father's death, after Howard Stark's death, to manage the company until Tony was ready. Tony is now ready. But Stane is still pushing him away. He's saying, we're not going to sell any more weapons. We're not going to do any of this. What does Obadiah Stane do? He immediately turns and sells weapons to the very same terrorists that kidnapped him. So what does that tell you? These terrorists have weapons that say Stark Industries on them. Of course they're working with Stane. And then, of course, he tries to put this, make this big ironmonger suit, right? There's one scene I want to talk about. So there's this reporter that Tony sleeps with at the beginning of the film, during the flashback sequence. And then she comes up to him later, after he's already reformed. She shows him pictures, and she shows him that Stark Industries gave the weapons to the terrorists and stuff. And he goes, I didn't approve this. She goes, well, your company did. And he goes, I'm not my company. He goes out and he immediately talks to Obadiah Stane. And Obadiah Stane says something to Tony. He said, I was the one. Basically, it missed everything. And something I didn't notice till now, she heard him. The look on her face, she goes, she heard him. Whether he was trying to whisper or not, she heard him. So she knows that Obadiah Stane set it up. But there's no story on it. She never publishes a story about it. Obadiah Stane is never publicly, at least as far as we know by the end of this, they were setting up that he dies in a plane crash. So he's never acknowledged as an enemy or a villain or anything. They never paint him in a bad light. I don't know if S.H.I.E.L.D. got to her first or if she decided not to. She finally had a conscience as a reporter and said, I'm not, no, it's not good for Tony Stark for me to do this. I did, screw him, so we have a connection. I don't know, but she did hear him. Just the look on her face tells you she heard him. The big Ironmonger fight at the end of this, it's two big metal men fighting. It's okay. He dies. Fine. Boom. And Pepper's like, I don't do it. It'll kill you, Tony. He's gonna sacrifice himself. That's the story. He came from this guy, this partier who didn't care about anyone, and now he's gonna sacrifice himself to save people. That's the big story arc for Tony Stark. The Stark arc. If you will. The Stark arc. So, yeah. I do like the scene where after Rhodey comes in, played by Terrence Howard, and kind of saves him, and Tony takes off. He turns around and he looks at the other suit and he goes, next time, baby. As if telling us, oh, he'll be War Machine in the next film. Even though they recast the role, and we'll get to that in Iron Man 2 review. But, yeah. This film, watching it again, it's only been out for a few months, but thinking about how grand of scale the rest of the films come in, it's a little disconnected, but it still holds up really well. And I still think it's one of the better films in the MCU, to be honest. And I like how it shows how you can start a world small. Like the DCU was trying with Man of Steel. And then slowly, gradually make your way through. Where the DCU got it wrong, though, is that they started small, and then, okay, we're going to show as many characters as we can in Batman v Superman, and try to make it bigger. But they tried to make it big too fast. Here, they built it. The first 4 films, being these first 5 films, are all very secluded. They have a little connection to each other. And then there's these post-credit scenes that connect them. But they don't try to force a bunch of characters together. Except for maybe Iron Man 2, but we'll get to that. Even then, it's a little, it's small scale. You don't try to go big scale until you get to the Avengers. It's all slowly building to something. Over the course from 2008 to 2012, that's 5 years. 5 years, and the DCEU couldn't even wait 2. Okay? Or 4. Right? Because 2013, 3. Whatever. Couldn't even do it in 3. They did it in 5. That was a good amount of time. But they spread out I'm not going to do one big video on the entire MCU like I did with DCEU. That would take too long. I'm just going to say it now. They took their time to do things. They didn't rush. They didn't say that they spread out their films. Phase 1 for 5 years. And they didn't say, oh, we're just going to do 3 years. And the next film's just going to have 3 main heroes and the rest are going to be shown in the background. No. They didn't know. They didn't even do it right. They rushed. Where they took their time and they did it right. Sometimes they hit or miss. Some people say that Incredible Hulk is probably the worst of Phase 1. Maybe even some would say Iron Man 2. Who knows? But they took their time. And it all stems from one single post-credit scene. A scene I had no idea existed at first because when I got the DVD, I stopped it once the credits started. Dang, once Black Sabbath started playing, I should say. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. It should be with some Butthead for you. Dun, 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 dun. Breaking the law. It's a different song, but yeah, I would stop it after that song played. Not knowing, because after I saw The Incredible Hulk, I was talking to my friend about it, and he goes, well, there's something at the end of Iron Man. I'm like, no, there's not. He goes, yeah, after all the credits are done. I'm like, what? And I was on the phone with him. And so I put the DVD in, and I went to the end, and I'm like, sure enough, there's Samuel L. Jackson, an actor I knew in this from that actor I actually knew at the time. And he's like, I'm here to talk about the Avengers Initiative. Now, I kind of thought about that. I kind of figured that's what they were doing when Tony Stark shows up at the end of Incredible Hulk. But hearing Samuel L. Jackson say it, Avenger Initiative, I was like, how are they actually doing it? Because I was a big Avengers fan. I played the Avengers arcade game. I watched the Avengers United We Stand TV show, which was all right for how it was. So, yeah, for Iron Man, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed the film. It's really good. I get an 8 out of 10. For the MCU, I'm going to give you my favorite line from each of the films in the MCU. And with Iron Man, it is, of course. But the truth is, I am Iron Man. So what are your thoughts on Iron Man? Let me know in the comments below. Like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.